going to do a bleach card, and it's just the most magnificent technique to use if you want to do something really, really quick. And as you can see, we've got brown on green with a black outline. Now that brown was actually exactly the same colour as the green. It's just that when we've bleached it out with regular household bleach, it actually takes the colour out and takes it back to the original colour that they started with, okay? So we're going to actually be using the same image today, and I'll pop that aside. The things that you're going to need if you want to be able to work along with me, and you should be able to do it because it's easy enough for us to be able to do that. The best way for you to learn as well. So for the bleaching, we want to use an open image stamp, as open as possible, because we're going to do essentially a lot of colouring in. I've chosen to use this nice open floral image. Now before I ink my stamp up, I'm using a little duster pad that you can buy this from your local stamp store, and I'm just going to dust across the cardstock that I'm going to stamp on. What that will actually do is just full of a powder, and what it does is when I stamp, it'll just help the embossing powder not to stick where we don't want it to stick. So turn my stamp upside down and working with the pad onto the stamp, because it's a larger image, makes it much, much easier to ensure that I've got a really, really good coverage on that stamp. So inked up, going to place it on my card exactly where I want to get my image on here, fairly well centered, straight down, and a good firm press just to make sure that you've got your image all the way around pressed on there. Much, much easier if you do it standing up. When you're trying to do it for a camera, it's a little bit harder to get it that way. So then black ultra fine embossing powder all over the top, just remembering that again your black fine ultra embossing powder is going to give you the nice crispest, cleanest image for what you're doing. We have a little bit of powder, as you can see, just on the edges there. So what I'm going to do is just use a brush just to brush that off, give it another little tap, move my stamp, set it aside, cover my pad, just because that's force of habit for me. Powder back into the container, just using my piece of paper as a funnel. Dust off that piece of paper because I want to keep using it. I'm just going to put the lid back on that embossing powder because, as you know, I have a tendency to knock it over. Grab my heat gun, I'm going to preheat it for 30 seconds, just until it's hot enough to emboss really, really quickly. And again, as you know from when we've been talking about embossing before, we don't want to go all over it moving your gun like this. You just want to start at one point so you can actually see it going, and just watch that powder's already started to emboss. So I'm just going to move the gun evenly around that as I go across to the top. I don't want to over emboss that picture, because if I do, the card will start to retract that embossing powder and we won't have that nice raised image that we get. Just going to turn that off and turn my card around, or I'm going to burn my fingers. Just finish embossing that down that side and check that it's done all over. Beautiful. And there you go. We have a nice embossed image ready to go. Now for the bleaching, I'm going to use my Fantastics. Okay, that's my preference. There's no right or wrong way to doing this. Just make sure that you've got a nice clean piece of card. Just dip your Fantastic stick into it, and anywhere where you want to colour in as if you were just colouring with a normal thing, just go through with your stick. Now you can do it once, and then if you think that you want it to go lighter again or darker again, whichever way your card tends to go, you can go back and go over it. Just try not to make it too wet, because now the heat that we've used on this card is actually buckled a little bit. That's okay, because when we put the tape on it to mount it onto a card, it will actually settle down and even out. Don't be worried about going over the top of your embossing, because you've got embossing powder on it. Then it's actually not going to make any difference to it whatsoever. So I'm just going to go through and colour the image in, if you can see what I'm doing. Okay, all right in. As you see, with the point on this Fantastics, it means I can get right into there if I want to, and not be concerned that it's going to go out the edges. And again, try not to go out of the edges, because then you get that horrible, messy, unfinished look, and it really doesn't have the result that you want to get to have a nice, clean, crisp image. There's a few areas that I'd like to go over and just make it go a little bit whiter. I'm also going to just do around the edge of this little twirl here a little bit, just to draw it out. just going to pull that through just a little bit, and there we go. There's a tiny spot there that I haven't covered, so I'll just make sure that I've covered all the areas that I want to cover. It doesn't matter if it's a bit textured and looks a little bit uneven, because that does give you the texture that you would normally get on a flower. Now if you want to, that's finished. We've already done that one, as you can see, and that's changed colour already, so you've got a really nice bleached image. And again, remembering that if you bleach a different colour cardstock, you will get a different colour, as in I bleached green, and so there's your contrast of what actually happens with your different colours. So I'm going to seal the lid on the bleach, and I'm going to remove the bleach. I don't want it to touch any card or anything, just in case any of it's come out. And again, I'm going to use the same corner punch that I use for so many of my things, and that's that little one that does the little notches on the side. I'm just going to punch the corners out of this card, and this is so easy because it literally is a card that's a 5-minute card. But if you want a card that you need, you know, something really quick, go for your bleaching. Can't go wrong any time. And so then we're going to just look at that being put there on that black card there. It's going to mount it on there, and then we'll have a finished product. And again, I'm going to use the foam mounting tape because I just want to get a little bit of dimension to the actual card itself when it's finished off. And as I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to, you could just bleach straight onto the black background that I'm going to use, and again emboss in black, because it's going to bleach out, so you're going to end up with a different colour around your black, even on your black card as well, and that can look quite spectacular. So almost finished. Just going to pop a piece in the middle for good measure. Just peel off the paper off the tape. I keep bleach in the house all the time because it is something that, you know, is, again, it's just such an easy technique to just get the hang of, play with different colours, and do come up with a result that you're really happy with. Let's see which way I want to position that. I think I'll go down that way. Then I open my card out flat just because it's a little bit easier to work with that way, and position it where I want it. So okay, press it down, put it in the center, and there you go. There's your finished card. So how's that? You know, 5 minutes and you've got a beautiful looking card.